Hey gang, it's Fett here at Azalea Studios in Nashville with another guitar toolbox tip. Today I'm going to talk about a really picky subject, at least for guitarists. I'm going to be talking about guitar picks. Now you might be wondering, what in the world could you do an entire video about on guitar picks? But trust me, you're going to want to stick around for it. You'd be surprised how much just changing your pick will change your feel and therefore your playing and therefore the sound of your guitar. So let's get right to it. So we all know that there are different thicknesses of picks. I'm sure you have a choice between thin and medium and heavy and maybe whatever other thicknesses there are between them. But have you ever tried just switching your pick to get a different sound? Most people end up with one type of pick or another in terms of the thickness, and then they stick with it from that point onward and never really think about it. Well, you'd be surprised how radically different a few millimeters in the thickness of a pick will make. So let's get some examples here. I'm going to start out with the normal old Fender thin pick. You've probably seen these puppies for most of your guitar playing years. And this is a thin pick, and I'm going to play some chords here in this video to illustrate the difference that you get in terms of tone and attack and what have you with the different picks. So right now we're going to play just a plain old chord and strum through it a little bit. This is with the thin pick. So you'll notice there's a little bit of a clacking sound, for a better way to put it, and it's a little bit percussive. You get a little bit of that impact of the pick moving as well as the sound of the strings. So once again, here's that chord. And if we're going to do maybe a slightly different feel, let's do like a pumping sound on it. So that's what a thin pick sounds like. Now watch, all I'm going to do, exactly the same stuff I'm going to play. I'm now going to pick up actually let's go with medium to do things in order. Here's a Fender medium pick, made by the same company, same materials. The only difference is the pick is thicker than the first one we tried. And listen to it now. So the first thing you're going to notice is it doesn't have much of that clacky sound, that little bit of a tic-tac kind of a sound going on, but it also might sound a little bit fuller, a little bit louder, maybe even a little bit thumpier, and that makes sense because we're having a completely different physical reaction now of the strings to the pick. So let's do a little bit more with the medium and then we'll switch back and forth. Okay, so that was the medium. Here's the thin. All right, and here again is the medium. So it literally sounds like a different guitar. There's a total different tonal sound. And let's move up to the heavy now. Do the same thing. I definitely hear a difference in volume and a little bit of a difference in the attack of this pick. There's the heavy pick compared to the medium. So the difference between the medium and the heavy is not as noticeable as the difference between the thin and the medium. But listen when we go from the heavy back to the medium, or rather the heavy back to the thin. That was heavy, here's thin. Really quite different. So there's a lot of other things that make picks sound different from one another and make your feel of the pick and therefore your playing different. So let's move on a little bit to picks that are made out of other materials. And these first couple are kind of subtle, But Jim Dunlop picks, for example, tend to be made of a little bit less shiny material, a little bit more resistant, I guess. And so if you're playing, say, with a Fender medium, and then you do the same thing with one of the Jim Dunlops, same gauge, it sounds a little bit duller, maybe, for lack of a better way to put it, a bit less of that chang sound in the attack. So once again, here's the Jim Dunlop that's made out of a little bit duller material. And here's that Fender again, Fender medium. So even that gives you a subtle difference in the sound of the two picks, even though they're the same shape, the same gauge, and the same kind of style, if you will. Now, speaking of that, we have a pick here that is made by, you know what, it's so tiny on here, I literally can't tell the manufacturer on it. That's a little bit bad marketing, folks. But anyway, here's one that's almost like glass. It's really, really thick, really, really shiny plastic. And if you know what it is, maybe you can tell me in the comments below whose pick this is. But anyway, it has a totally different sound. Surprisingly smooth compared to the other two. It's also a lot thicker. It's even thicker than a extra heavy. But that'll give you a little bit different sound. Similarly, Fender makes a very, very tiny version of the same thing. This is that glassy kind of plastic material. It's exactly the same shape as a standard pick, but much smaller in size. So those couple of materials will make a difference in the sound of the pick. The next thing I'd like to talk about is picks that actually have some coarseness on them. So I've been using these picks that have sort of, I don't know, almost like a sandpaper feel, a little bit resistant plastic on them. This is also a Jim Dunlop, by the way, for many, many years. And the reason I do that is twofold. One, it helps me hang on to the pick a little bit better. But I have two options now in terms of the sound I can get out of the pick. The first one, this is a medium, by the way, is just like we've been hearing with other medium picks. But I can also use the scratchy part that I used to hold onto it, and I get a little bit more aggressive sound. So you hear just a little bit of that scratching, a little bit of that scraping sound when I hit the strings there. It's a lot more noticeable on electric, by the way. When I play electric guitar and I want to really dig in and get kind of a little bit of grit out of right at the source of the guitar, I use these that have the scratchy stuff on them. Speaking of which, I found these a few years ago. I love these things, and I put them on almost every pick that I own. These are called pick grips, spelled G-R-I-P-Z. And they are from Page, the folks who make the really excellent Page capos. And what they are is little pieces of sandpaper, in essence, that you can take the backing off of and stick onto any pick. So you take your pick, you strip off the back, and then you can place it anywhere you want on the pick. And if the pick is a different size or a different shape or whatever, you can actually cut the stuff. It's really, really easy to cut and mold it. You can place it on there any angle you want, whatever the case may be. And what you end up with is a pick that is either on one side or both, has this sandpaper feeling stuff, and it gives you a really, really excellent grip. It's impossible for your finger to slip off of this. It's really, really good when your hands are sweating. And what I found about using these things is, I've gotten more confident in using my dynamics as a player. What I mean by that is when I've got that stuff on a pick I'm using, regardless of the gauge or the shape or the size or anything else, I know that if I really, really strum hard or play lead hard and really dig into it, that I'm not going to lose the pick out from under me. But the same thing applies for really, really soft stuff. If I want to finesse it and really put a soft touch on the guitar, I know I'm not going to lose it because my fingers are too loose on the pick. So again, these are the pick grips from Page. The folks that make the capos, I think they come in a pack of 24. They're really nice, so there's a whole bunch of them in a pack, and I put them on everything. Virtually every one of my picks I use has got pick grips on it right now. So speaking of holding picks in a different way, this is one of my also favorites here. This is called the star pick, and because it's a star-shaped hole that's cut in the center of it. And there's something about, first of all, you get the grip because you've got your fingers on either side of it, of the pick. But the other thing that I find really interesting is because you can feel your index finger with your thumb and vice versa, it actually changes the sensation of how the pick feels in your hand. So as you're moving and you're manipulating the pick, there's something about that contact between those two fingers that actually makes you play different. And that, of course, will affect your style and the sound of the guitar. So I love these star picks. They come in all sorts of gauges and colors and everything else. So highly recommend them, or the pick grips from Page are absolutely marvelous. So speaking of which, there are lots and lots of ways to hold a pick, and people have tried all sorts of different designs and what have you over the years. And this one here is a wave-shaped pick called the grip pick, just like it sounds. And it's actually kind of different contours. It's got some curves in it. So at the end where it goes against the strings, it's actually got a little downward dip and then comes to a point. And the area where you hang onto the pick actually has an upward dip, an upward curve. So you hold it like this when you play with the pick against the strings. Some people find these very, very comfortable to use. And again, they come in all sorts of different gauges and colors and what have you. So that's a grip pick. A company called F-Picks, I believe, is the name of the company. Their website says f1.com, so maybe the company is F1, but I'll get to some more of their stuff in a moment. They came out with one a few years ago where the little curvy bit is actually where you put your index finger, and so it forces you to hold the pick like this when you're using it. Where your force is with your fingers is different with this pick. It's really, really good for good, hard, open strumming and stuff like that because it forces the pick to stay at exactly the right angle on the guitar. So that's the F1 pick at f1pick.com. And last but not least, here's one that's actually got a little indentation in the middle. So the center of the pick is actually thinner than the edges. So this is made out of that glass-like plastic that we saw from a couple other picks, but it's also got this little indentation. It's called the Big Stubby pick, by the way. And it's again a nice way to be able to hang on to the pick while you're playing because your fingers are centered in the middle of it. Also keeps it from shifting back and forth in your hand as well. So there's lots and lots of ways to hold the pick, and every one of them will affect your comfort level and your confidence as a player and what you're willing to do to change how you play and therefore the sound of your guitar. There are lots of different designs of shapes. This is a teardrop shape from John Pierce, that's right. This is a teardrop shape. There are lots and lots of those out there. Here's one that's sort of a bigger teardrop shape, but not quite. It's like half teardrop and half regular shape. It's also from John Pierce and lots of other places. So now we get into what I would call effects picks. So these picks might not be something that you want to use all the time on every song, but you could switch to one of these things to get particular effects. And the first one I'm going to mention is from the company that makes the F1 pick that I showed you before. That's this one with the thing on the where you hold the index finger to play it like this. But this actually has two picks that hit the strings at the same time, or just, ever so slightly at a different time. So as you strum, both of the picks are hitting the string. This happens to be a very, very thin gauge, but this is the FX2 rather than the F1 from the F1 pick people. And it sounds like this. Actually, I'll play with a regular pick first. So here's a normal medium pick. And here's the FX2 pick with the double pick in there. So you get, not only because this is a thinner gauge, that clackety clack sound you get from a thin pick, but you also get that slight repeat, if you will, of the impact of the pick on the strings, because it's actually two different picks in one. So I'll do that again, and then I'll do a strum with it. So here we go with just the pumping strum. So, if two picks aren't enough, they actually make one called the FX3, which, believe it or not, has got 3 picks that hit the strings all together. And this kind of opens up things and makes it sound like a 12-string-ish kind of thing. There's just more percussiveness going on. It's as if you're hitting, well, if you're hitting a string 3 times, it maybe sounds like there's more than one string that you're hitting at a time. So that's kind of the other way to look at it. So here's the FX3. As opposed to the FX2. I'd say the effect is a little more intense with the FX3 than with the FX2. Again, that's kind of a novelty pick for very specific effects that you might want to make. I heard about one a few years ago, back when I was a technology editor for Performing Songwriter magazine for many years, and this one kind of caught my eye because I'd never seen anything like it in my life. This is the Jellyfish pick, and believe it or not, it actually has metal tines on it, a series of metal tines that go across the strings as you play. It sounds like this. This is the Jellyfish pick. So it's got a sweeping sound to it, a swishing sound. Also gives you a little bit of that kind of 12-stringy kind of thing, but it's very percussive. So when you get used to playing it, it can have some very good effects on your guitar sound. And all of these, of course, sound different on electric than they do on acoustic, and sound different when you're playing lead than when you're playing rhythm. And of course, I'm using rhythm here to kind of illustrate it with the gear I've got here to record it and stuff, so it's noticeable when I show you the effects. But this one's a very interesting one. It's completely novel. Never seen anything quite like it. Unfortunately, it became popular, or it came out right around the time that coated strings were becoming very popular, and they are basically covered with a layer of plastic, which preserves their life. Well, metal tines and plastic coating don't mix well, so this will shred your plastic coating on your coated strings. So that's one caveat. If you're using normal uncoated strings, it's not going to hurt them at all. And of course, it won't hurt them even if you tear up the plastic a little bit. They'll still play fine, but they won't have the life preservation that the plastic is on there for in the first place. But anyway, I thought I'd better mention that this guy wreaks havoc on coated strings. So last but not least, just for fun, oh, actually, before I do that, I found out about a pick yesterday from Nancy Moran, my partner in crime and all things in life. She, I think, saw an ad, and I told her I was going to do this video about picks, and she said, well, I just saw a really interesting pick in an ad, and she forwarded me the link. It's called the Attack pick, and it's ATTAK and then PIK, so Attack pick. And it's a pick that has a series of bumps on it. And there's actually 3 models. There's the Attack pick, the Ambush pick, and the Blade pick. And the patterns of the bumps are different from each pick. And they have some audio on their website where you can hear the difference between them, what have you. But again, they kind of fit in that effect novelty pick area that you might want to have one around for a very specific sound. So if you happen to be trying to get a shred metal sound that's very aggressive or something out of your electric guitar, one of those 3 versions of the Attack pick may work very, very well for that, even if you don't use it all the time on everything you do. So I wanted to mention that. But last but not least, we can get really crazy and use a very, very large pick, just to give you a perspective here. Here it is next to the the Fender Medium or the Fender Heavy. This is actually a promotional pick. It's a company that makes promo picks for artists and people like that. It's called Pick World. And I just thought for grins to kind of close out this video, I'd try to play with this thing and see what kind of sound we get. This should be interesting. It's hard to do it fast. Okay, I haven't come up with a need for this thing off the top of my head here, but I thought we'd have a little fun with it. So the idea behind this is, if you're just willing to experiment a little bit and change your pick from performance to performance, or from recording to recording, or from one song to the next and what have you, you might find that you get a lot of variety in the sound of your guitar. People ask me all the time how they can change the sound of their guitar in performance or in the studio, and they usually ask me questions about what kind of gear to use or how to mic up the guitar differently and that kind of thing. And a lot of times I tell them, have you changed your pick lately? And this is why, because there's lots and lots of different sounds that you can get out of just changing a piece of plastic in your hand. So that's my picky subject for today. If you like what you're getting here in this video, feel free to hit the like button and also subscribe to the channel. If you'd like to be notified about other videos that we have coming up soon, hit that notification bell, and I'll see you in the next one. So now I'm going to put a heavy pick in the mix. So this is another Fender pick. This is a Fender Heavy. Whoops. Fender Heavy here. And we're going to get to dropping picks here a little bit later in the video. I got some things to say about that too. Too funny. Got the pick centered a little bit more. I've got the camera as much in there, right? Hello. Okay, well that was fun. Now that would make a great outtake.